Thank you. So can you guys hear me pretty good in the back? Herb, can you hear me in the back? Okay. Good, good, good. I have to say I'm pretty excited because over these years I've been here in a different capacity. You know, I've been here as more of a professional, you know, sharing what I've learned. And today it's a little different being here as a peer, and I'm just very grateful for the opportunity to be able to do that. I can do it partly because I don't do any more clinical practice. And so that's what's super. And I know we got a lot of different chapters represented here, so I'm not going to call you out because I knew I'd forget one, all right? But I just want to say you guys did a great job getting here. I'm going to share with you all today a little bit about my life, my journey, because today I stand before you, a person living well with a mental health condition, but that wasn't always the case. And so my hope is to share with you all what I've kind of learned in my journey, and so that you got a good part of it right there in that book. And I called it Unlocking Wellness Within because I'm going to share with you a combination, all right? And that combination is, you can't just use one number. If you've ever tried to open up a combination lock, right? It takes more than one. And so today we're going to do something. But I got to get started this way. I actually have a copy of one of my other books, and it is Stress Mastery. And actually in it, I have a $20 bill. My question is, who wants it? All right, so my question again is, who wants it?
Which? Among you the book.
All right, I'm going to ask one more time. Who wants it? All right. All right, don't get mad at Rick, you guys.
Thank you.
He gets it. And you want to know why he gets it? Is exactly why I did this. What I'm going to talk about today, we all wanted it. But here's the thing about wellness. It's not enough to just want it. You got to get up, and I got 3 words I want you to write down. First word, and by the way, I created those little pieces of paper so you put them on your refrigerator. All right? So what you notes you take, you will actually use. Not to go in the filing cabinet, and I got you the magnets to go and put it up there too. We'll get to those in a little bit. But first word I want you to write down is action. A-C-T-I-O-N. And next to that word, here's what I want you to write, and I'll go slow. A critical task. Implemented. Only now. And underline only now. And I'll repeat it. A critical task. Implemented. Only now. Make sense? Because that's what we do when we take action. So if you've seen the book, you know I got lots of word tools. I call those things word tools, all right? There's the other 2 words that are in your book, but I want you to write them down because I want to be on your refrigerator list. The first one is do, D-O. And next to that, I want you to write direct opportunity. Direct opportunity. And then the next one is don't. D-O-N''T. And next to that, I want you to write denied opportunity not trying. Denied opportunity not trying. What I'm going to share with you all today and what I'm going to talk about, we have to take action on. Wellness doesn't happen by accident. Unless you actually take the lock and you do the work, and those are really important words. But I have to tell you all, I'm going to share with you today lessons that I learned. And I didn't come up with this idea. I went to a workshop with Jack Canfield. Anybody know who that is? The Chicken Soup for the Soul guy? And he did this. And he had one of his books up there. And except he put $100 in it, you know. And sorry, my budget is a little limited. And I was about midway in the room. And of course, I sat in my chair wanting it. You know, I wanted his book. I wanted the money. And of course, I didn't get up and get it, right? What stopped you? By the way, did anybody else here think like Rick about, all right, let me just walk up there and get it? Raise your hands. What stopped you?
He just beat me.
He beat you. Fear? Yep. Embarrassed? Yep.
I just consider that is not a polite thing to do.
Yeah, the polite thing to do. And this changed my life, you all, and that's why I'm sharing it with you. So I give credit, because I got it. I thought about there are so many things that I've wanted to do in my life, but that I never actually took action or did. And so we got to break through those barriers. We can't let things stop us, because really the illness is that strong, it will just hold on to us. It's quicksand. All right? And so that little lesson was one of the biggest lessons that I learned in my recovery, which started a long time ago. All right? Now, what I've got to do is grab my little clicker here, and then we should make Rick buy us all lunch, right? Good thing it's free. But so I'm going to give you, and here's what I'm going to do. I actually have a little card I'm going to give you later at lunch as well. I mean, take notes as we go along, if you need them, if you don't need them. The other thing I'm trying to do is record this. If it turns out, I actually am going to put it up on a website, and Dave's going to send out the URL so you guys could come back and watch this. Or if you know people that couldn't get here today, they could actually watch it. If it doesn't turn out, y'all aren't going to be watching anything, all right? So, but in order to, so how many people here know who carved David, the statue David? Anybody know who did it and yell out their name? Michelangelo. Well, so here's why I call this wellness within. I read a story one time that it's alleged that Michelangelo was interviewed, and somebody said to him, how long did it take you to carve David, right? And he said, I didn't carve David. And what allegedly said, now I can't have proof of this, is he said, David was in the block of stone all along. I simply released David from the stone. I have this belief that we all have wellness inside of us, and that you got to have the tools to order to unlock it. And the sad part is there are a lot of people suffering across this world that don't, know about the tools or even have access to them. And I didn't learn this on my own. I actually learned this from my father. And it's a picture of my dad, and he was a doctor. And as a young girl growing up, I used to see people come in wheelchairs, and then 6 months later walk out with a cane. They actually were walking with a cane. And my father was way ahead of his time when it comes to wellness. And he believed that everybody had it inside of them, and he would just help guide them, to finding that. Now, I didn't get to learn too much from my father, because he actually was taken from me when I was 14 years old. And I sometimes think about, wow, what else would I have learned? But I have to tell you, that was the most important lesson I learned, is that we all have it inside of us. It's just finding the right ways. And I got to tell you, I'm so glad the Institute is working on the brain itself and not the symptoms. And that's really what DBSA National is focused on. What is wellness? Why do we have medication? I'm going on a tangent here, but why do we have medication that just treats the symptoms and doesn't really focus on what is wellness and how can we kind of function better regardless of what that is? Now, I use a word, and again, it's on the back of this card I'm going to share with you. A definition I came across was from the National Wellness Institute. And I'm not going to repeat it because you guys are going to get it, all right? So you don't have to write it down and try and, what'd she say? But here's the definition. It says wellness is simply an active process of becoming aware of and making choices towards a more successful existence. Now, it's not everybody here wants a successful existence.
Could you just say that?
Well, I'm going to give it to you on a card. It's actually going to be on a card, so you don't even have to write it down. Yeah. I have a girlfriend right now, and this is why I'm videotaping, is because she's so sick that she couldn't come here. In fact, she doesn't even leave her house except to go to medical appointments or to the hospital. Her successful life, though, has shifted. She was a teacher, a vice principal, then she had to retire because she got sicker, and quite honestly, her successful existence right now is staying out of the hospital, all right? It's what is different for everybody, and it means that illness and wellness can coexist. Doesn't mean we get rid of the illness. My illness is going nowhere, all right? but it means that we can have wellness at the same time that the illness may be present in our life. Make sense? And I promise you'll get that card. Now, the thing about this, though, is that I got to, in order to share with you all how I came to sit here today, you got to know where I started. So, I was born in Burbank, California. I'm not giving the year because you'll know my age, all right? But this is me, and then there is my brother and I. And I came from a blended family. My dad had 4, my mom had 3, and it wasn't the Brady Bunch. If you were here last year, you know, right? Because I shared a picture of all of us. When I was 7 years old, my family decided, my parents, to move from Burbank. By the way, I was born between NBC Studios and Walt Disney. Pretty good place to be born, right? Burbank, California. I don't know if they still do the Tonight Show there, but I used to watch the people line up, you know, waiting to go in to see Johnny Carson. But when I was 7, my parents decided to move to California, further up, and we went to this place called Bass Lake. And Bass Lake is right outside Yosemite National Park. So if you aren't familiar with Yosemite, it's the best park out there. No, I'm kidding. Actually, Yellowstone's good too. They're all different. But I was very spoiled growing up because I grew up in the mountains, and I want to show you a picture of what the lake really looked like. So there's the little thing you could kind of show you all the different stuff it has. But I grew up in a very spoiled place. It was beautiful. I loved that I had that opportunity to be able to do that. And my parents had decided that they wanted to become campground owners. So we actually had a campground and we had a lodge. And if anybody saw The Great Outdoors, which was a very good movie like 15 years ago with John Candy and Dan Aykroyd, that was filmed at Bass Lake. And the lodge and the bar where they're having the bar scene, that was actually filmed where I grew up. You know, in the bar and the restaurant. But the coolest part was we'd have these families come back every year. So I didn't have just one family, but I actually had adopted families. All right? And then I decided to go to college. My dad passed away when I was 14, so I decided, all right, I want to go somewhere where nobody knew me. Because when you grow up a doctor's daughter in a little town, your identity is you are Dr. Ricard's daughter. And I wanted to be Carol. You know, I wanted to go someplace, so I decided to go to the Midwest. And I ended up going to I graduated from Kansas State University. Now, they call Kansas the land of Oz. You notice? So this is kind of their little thing. But some of you in here know this about me. Some of you don't know this about me, right? But that my uncle was Ray Bolger. And in case you don't know who Ray Bolger is, he was the Scarecrow in The Wizard of Oz. So it was very appropriate that I ended up in the land of Oz when my Uncle Ray had also landed in the land of Oz. And then, here's what happened. I clicked my heels 3 times, and I landed in New Jersey. Oh, by the way, in case you all wondered what my Uncle Ray looked like outside of his Scarecrow costume, that's him in the middle. And that's me with my little Dorothy Hamill wedge. And if you're old enough to know Dorothy Hamill wedge, you know what I'm talking about. If you're not, good. But yeah, that was my Uncle Ray. And the other, I got to tell you all, it wasn't a Wizard of Oz I left. He was on the Partridge Family. He was actually Grandpa. He was the really cool guy on the Partridge Family. But when I clicked my heels 3 times, I crash landed in New Jersey. No, I didn't really crash land. I love New Jersey, all right? You live in the Midwest, you got to drive 2.5 hours to go do something. Think about all the places you could be in 2.5 hours out here. But I came back here to be my mom's caregiver. In 1987, she had quadruple bypass surgery, and I was only coming back here to take care of her. And then I got back here and I fell in love with New Jersey. You know, the people, the place, and so I stayed back here. Now, my mom went ahead and passed away in 1989, but I was grateful that I got to come care for her and give back to what she had given to me. And that was a big changing point in my life because I lived down in Vineland, New Jersey. Anybody know where Vineland is? Yeah. Ooh, baby. They thought Kansas was slow. I remember being in Vineland for 2 hours wanting to go back to Kansas. It's a different world down there. I've come to love it. In fact, truth be told, I drive an hour and 45 minutes to go get my hair cut in Vineland. all right, because I just have, my heart is still there. But what happened is that a couple years after my mom had passed away, I started feeling really crappy. And what I noticed is I was tired all of the time. And so I did what anybody does. You go to the doctor, and you say, listen, I'm tired all the time. I don't know, what's going on? Do you think it's mono? They do a blood test for mono. Guess what happens? It comes back, it's not mono, all right? And over the course of 2 years, it just really progressed to where I had tests for, and I don't know, people can relate to this, because when you are experiencing symptoms of a mental health condition like depression or anxiety, you think physical. You think I'm having a heart attack, or you think, okay, you know what is this? So I had tests for cancer, I had tests for my thyroid. They did the mono test every 3 months because it would still kind of feel that tired. And what ended up happening is that I started out being this kind of normal functioning person. And over the course of time, I actually stopped going to the gym. It got so bad that I stopped doing my shopping and my activities of daily living or the laundry. It got to where I stopped hanging out with my friends, and all I wanted to do was go to work, go home, go to bed. All right? Anybody here relate to that? Just crawl into bed. My eating went, all right, and then even got to where my work went. And I like to say is that I became this non-functioning human being. Anybody here kind of been in that place? Now, if you're feeling it now, I have to tell you that's not a reality-based thought, because you're here. And if you weren't functioning, you all wouldn't be here, right? But I was lucky, though, because guess where my higher power put me to work? A psychiatric hospital. Hampton Hospital. I was hired as a rec therapist, and that's where I started. I knew nothing about mental health. I knew nothing about addiction. And the woman that hired me said, Carol, I can teach you what you need to know. About 8 months into my work there. Now, this is 27 years ago, y'all. Our healthcare system was better back then. People stayed in the hospital to get well. I think if I'd had to learn those lessons today, I don't know if I'd be able to learn the same lessons, because we don't get to stay in the hospital long enough to even get stable enough to get out of the hospital. But I was very lucky. In 8 months, I'm sitting there in rounds, and I'm thinking to myself, doctor's talking something about some thyroid test, and it could be a marker for, depression. And the light bulb, I had an Oprah aha moment. And I was like, wait a minute, that's the test that I had. But then all the others came back good. And you've ever been in that situation where you're glad it's not what they think it is, but then you don't know what it is? And I called my Aunt Gwen. My Uncle Ray had passed away in 1985. I called my Aunt Gwen, and who was really my last living kind of mother figure for me. And I said, Aunt Gwen, I don't know what I'm going to do. I am so sick and tired of feeling sick and tired. And I had racked up $5,000 bills in credit card co-pays. That was my co-pays for my health insurance. Thank God they gave me a credit card so I could still keep doing it. But I realized in that moment too, I was like, wait a minute, that's what my mom said a whole bunch of years ago when I was in high school. My mom had a heart attack back then, got very depressed. I didn't know what it was at the time. And all I heard was her saying, I'm sick and tired of feeling sick and tired. Anybody, raise your hands if you've ever had that feeling, said it out loud or thought it, right? Or if you know people that have. And I went to my internist and I said, okay, I think it's depression. Do you think? She said, that could be, Carol. I said, all right, do you know a psychiatrist you could send me to? And that was it. Because I saw people get well. 8 months in the hospital, I saw people get well. I saw people go from being a non-functioning human being to actually coming and being functioning again and going back to work. So I knew it was possible. And so I started medication, and the first one, second one, third one actually worked, all right? And then I got involved in some therapy. And that was the beginning of my recovery, my journey. But the amazing part is that I got to learn what I'm going to share with you all today. Because I saw what did we do in the hospital that helped people get well, and then I just tried to do that in my life. All right? And so that's where this comes from. And I want to share it with you all today. So, the first letter is A. All right? And what A stands for is this, attitude. Natalie mentioned it. Our brain is wired to go to the negative. The depression is wired to go to the negative. The anxiety is wired to just say, what's wrong with you? You know, your heart's palpitating, your shortness of breath. Our brains are wired to the negative, but it doesn't mean that we can't do something about it. And so I want to share with you a couple of the lessons that I learned, because believe it or not, people have a hard time believing this that know me. My attitude sucked. It really did. If you'd asked me what was good about anything, and this is before the depression, I'd say, what's good about it, right? I had 2 jobs. I still was behind on my car payment. I was working, quite honestly, my ass off. It just felt like I was just spinning my wheels. And I was a pessimist. I'm here to tell you, if you're a pessimist right now, don't give up hope, because it's possible to change. And I'm going to share with you all the tools that changed me. But, you know, if you've looked at my book, I love word tools. So here's what attitude is. It's adjust thinking to intentionally take us directions every day. That's what the word means. That's putting it into practice. So that's what our attitude is. And here's what I learned at Hampton Hospital. That people that had success in long-term sobriety, right, long-term recovery from dual diagnosis. I worked with a man 20 years. And Sam had 20 years. And I was just amazed. This is, you know, back then. Because people were saying a year, 2 years, 3 years. And I said to him, Sam, what is it that you do? You know, that's allowed you to have sustaining recovery. And you know what he told me? Carol, I wake up every morning and I start back at step 1. He basically reminds himself what's at risk every morning. And then the other thing was, he had this little Cupid doll in his pocket. You know, one of those things that, you know, a pen that has the hair sticking up like the little trolls. And I said, so what's that? Because I saw he had it every day. And he said, that's to remind me that I have this little disease of addiction that just wants to take over my life. And I realized that attitude is a direction that we give ourselves. And if we don't purposely set that direction towards wellness, guess where it goes? To illness. So for me, I actually use a wristband. That's my anchor to wellness. My focus is on wellness. What do I need to do to be well? And getting out of bed, sometimes you have to start before you all get out of bed. So raise your hands if you've ever been not able to get out of bed in the morning. All right? So here's what I want you to realize. If you get out of bed and you go sit in a chair, you've just taken a step in the direction of wellness. Make sense? Doesn't have to be a big change. We got to start small. And remember where she said about research has shown little bits of meditation? I like to think of it as pennies, nickels, dimes, and quarters. They're little amounts of money, but that when you put them all together, they make something. And so if you get to that place, get out of bed, go sit in a chair. Because here's the bad news. The symptoms of most mental health conditions will work to keep us sick. Whether that's concentration, anxiety, the depression, that's what makes these illnesses so different. Blood pressure, I was recently diagnosed with blood pressure, all right, hypertension. It doesn't get in the way of me being well. It's an annoyance I didn't even know I had, but when I can't get out of bed in the morning, that gets in the way of me being well. Make sense? So our attitude is our direction, and we have to set it. If you don't set it in the morning, all right, even before you get out of bed, it has to be wellness. So one of the things that I used to do is I used to set a wellness goal every day. And if it was just to get out of bed, maybe it was to go to work. There are times when I got to work and guess what happened? I had to leave work because I couldn't hold it together to be on the floor in the units with the patients. Thank God I had a very understandable, I was very upfront with what was going on, because you figure if you work in a psychiatric hospital, they should understand, right? And they did. But I know that's not always the case. But sometimes you could take the step forward and you might take 2 steps back But as long as you keep taking steps forward, all right, you're going to be ahead. It's only when we stop taking action that we kind of stay stuck where we are. So I wanted to share with you all a story, and I'll get out of the way so you can see the pictures. How many of you have ever heard of Burning Man? Raise your hands. Yeah, oh, more than I thought. So basically, Burning Man is a music festival, party festival that's in the Las Vegas desert. It is Woodstock for the new generations, all right, but bigger, because this is a picture of Burning Man out in the desert and how they arrange all their cabins and campers and tents and everything. And it was a few years ago, Labor Day weekend, that I got a call from my brother-in-law. And he said, Carol, I'm just calling to let you know that one of the girls is in the hospital. She took something at Burning Man, right? And she's in a hospital in Sparks, Nevada. Basically, her whole body's shutting down on her. Her liver has shut down. Her kidneys are not functioning. And I said to myself, wow. And my sister had two daughters. She had the older daughter, who is Adrian, who I like to call a, what was the word? Edgy. That's my word to describe Adrian. Not a bad girl. Just she did things differently beyond everybody's, you know, kind of level of understanding, right? And then Danielle, the younger. In my mind, I thought it was the edgy one, right? That would take something. Guess what? It was actually my other niece, Danielle. But what I want to tell you all is immediately as I got that news, here's the image that came in my mind. And granted, I have more years practice than you guys, all right? So it may not come to you so easily. But instantaneously, what I pictured in my mind was her sitting up in a hospital bed and me having a conversation saying, what the hell were you thinking, right? I pictured her well. I didn't picture her ill. And that goes a long ways.
Wait, Carol, did you see your nieces a lot?
I did. I mean, well, when I go to California, but on Facebook, which I know that doesn't count.
Sometimes when you see them, like in every day or every week,
Yeah,
you
no.
pick stuff up.
No. And so the most amazing thing is my mind went to wellness and not illness. The destination I chose because remember when Natalie was talking about things that we do over and over and over again, and they become new kind of, it really is new neural pathways in our brain. So I've practiced what I'm telling you all, and it is work to start, but it's the work that we got to do if we want to be well, all right? And my sister, what I was told about a week later was my sister refused to allow any doctor or nurse come into my niece's room and to speak of anything other than wellness. If they were going to talk about, well, what do you want to do, or end of life, or, you know, because honestly, for all intents and purposes, she was probably just a quarter of an inch away from dying. But my sister refused to let anybody be in that room that wasn't focused on wellness. And guess what? She was one of my dad's daughters, my dad's oldest daughter. So she got to be around my father more than what I did. And so that idea of wellness that's possible within us, she actually had greater exposure to that. And that's what she did. She also watched a TED Talk show about a neurosurgeon who shared a story about a mother who refused to give up hope and held on to that image. Anybody here know it? I don't know. Is anybody in here a cancer survivor? You know, if you don't mind, if you raise your hands, or anybody know of cancer survivors, raise your hands. You know, the one thing I've learned from cancer survivors is, guess which direction they go? Do they head towards the cancer, or do they head towards wellness and hope? Wellness and hope. It makes a huge difference. And this is a picture, they call it Burning Man because they really do burn a man. I don't know, he's like, I don't know how many stories tall, but it's a bonfire, basically. And the most amazing part is that my niece, they didn't even want to give her a kidney transplant or a liver transplant because she was too bad. And my sister said slowly things got a little bit better, enough for her to be transferred to a hospital in California where they all lived. And eventually, over time, my niece got better and better and better and better. Turns out it wasn't so much the substance as it was she had an undiagnosed heart condition. And even for a year later, she couldn't work for a whole year, but that recovery was long. But when we did a family reunion, that's my sister Wendy, and then that's her daughter Danielle. And the people in the hospital thought it was a miracle, but the truth is that my sister just held steadfastly onto that wellness, that direction. And I've come to learn from many other people that we get to decide which direction we're going to go in. And what you fuel is what also gets bigger and grows, right? And so if we focus on illness, and I focus on my symptoms, or I could say, what can I do? And it's work. I'm not saying that this isn't work, but I could tell you, as I'm sitting here today, it does work when you kind of do it. Now, here's the thing. Oh, wait, I was wondering if my video will work. Let me go back here. So, there are two really important lessons. I got two little things on you guys. Yeah?
Just a quick question. How long did it take her from start to finish to be released from the hospital?
The 2 years, by the time she was able to like get out of her house and go walk around, and because that heart condition, it was really it ended up being more serious because of the heart thing combined with the whole body shutting down. But it required patience. She couldn't work. She actually had to do physical therapy. She had to do cardiac rehab. I think of it as with any illness. And here's the thing about wellness. I'm talking about mental health, but the same thing applies to physical health. It's the same thing that's within all of us. Make sense? And I want to save some time to the end just for questions. I promise I will. But I want to share a really important lesson that Jack Canfield taught me too. And that was that our attitude is energy. And it's either positive or negative, right? And so, anybody here want to be a volunteer for me? I promise not to make you quack like a chicken. All right. Now, so I want to show you. He did this demonstration. I hope it works. I used to do it in the treatment programs I worked. It seemed to work all the time. But when you're in front of people, guess what? It may not. So what he wanted to point out to us was that when we are kind of thinking negative thoughts, it physically weakens our body. Like it really affects us, all right? So we have not coordinated this, have we?
No.
Okay. So.
I have no idea what you're going to ask me to do.
Huh?
I said I have no idea what you're going to ask me to do.
She doesn't know, so she's not a plant, y'all. All right? Just wanted you to know. So what Jack Canfield had us do is he put out your arm. So put out your left arm. All right? And I'm just going to try and push down your arm, and I want you just to think about a positive thought, all right, that you would describe. All right? Now, am I pushing?
Yep.
I'm pushing, y'all. All right? I'm pushing. All right. Now, here's what I want you to do. I want you to think a negative thought. Let me know when you got it.
Okay.
All right? Did you let me put your arm down?
No, I just...
She moved her strength.
Go for a positive thought again. Think of something you do really well. Think about something that you did really well, or what you just ate for breakfast, so we know it's a truth, right? All right, I'm going to try and push her arm down, y'all. She's pretty strong, actually. Okay, now I want you to think about an untruth, something, that inner critic maybe that you say to yourself, that belief that you kind of say to yourself, and when you have it, put your arm out. And just hold on to that thought. All right? Ready? Did I push your arm? Did you let me push your arm down?
No.
No. Wait, I got something for you. You guys, give her a round of applause. It doesn't have a 20 in it, but that changed my life, you all. That the attitude, the energy affects us. All right? And that's why it's really important, that if we have toxic people around us, that we either stay away from them, or if we have to be around them, we have to use a gas mask. All right? Literally, when I worked in women's trauma programs and we had people that had to do that, that's what we say. Okay, picture you are in a bubble. Picture you have a gas mask on, so that when you're having to be around that person, you actually are not inhaling all of the toxicity. I like the force Me personally, I like Star Trek, so I like the force field. You know how when they're about to become under attack and they hit, whoop, put up the force field? Well, that's what you can use with your mind. Our mind is the most powerful tool we have. Now, the other thing, though, I learned on my own, all right, was the power of our thoughts, and that when we're holding on to negative thoughts, we can't attract positive into our life. So I want you all to very carefully open up your envelopes. And is there anybody in here who doesn't have an envelope? There are probably a few. Okay, Dave doesn't have one. All right, open your envelopes. And they need a few, but keep them away from your computer. All right.
Oh, you have two more, I guess.
All right. So here's this other really amazing thing I learned. Write this down, because this is the name of the book that changed my life. It's called Excuse Me, Your Life is Waiting. Excuse Me, Your Life is Waiting, and her name is Lynn, Lynn Grabhorn, Grabhorn. And in that book, what I learned was the power of our feelings and our thoughts. Now, she used tuning forks.
Wait. What was the name of her?
The name of the author is Lynn, Lynn Grabhorn, Grabhorn. She used tuning forks in there to talk about the power of our beliefs, our thoughts, our feelings. I'd bought tuning forks, y'all, to try and do with my patients where I worked. They didn't work because I couldn't buy the expensive tuning forks. Tuning forks are really expensive. Is there anybody in here that's a musician? Because they could be a couple $100. But, so I came up with my own way of making it accessible. So here's what I want you all to do. I want you to take a negative, all right? So you have a negative in one hand. And then I want you to take the other and put it positive. And I want you to try and put those things together.
They can't.
What happens? Is your positive and negative going together?
No.
Take mine. Give me yours. Oh, where'd the other one go? Oh, here. Yours is going too?
No, but I can.
Okay. Now, there are a few cheaters amongst us because guess what? Truthfully, he caught me. I can hold it together, but so here's what I want you to do. Put it on the table. All right? And I want one side negative to be on the table. And then I want you to take the positive side and move it towards that on the table, and what happens to the negative? Exactly. So here's the thing, y'all. That's what happens and we know depression gets you even more negative. All right? And I have a different picture. I want to show you all, if I could find a clicker. So these are your refrigerator magnets to remind you that the work is in changing your thoughts. Because we can't, anybody here tried not to think negative? It's not possible.
Tried it doesn't
It's
work.
impossible. When people used to say that as a wellness goal, at my program I worked in Milestones in Trenton, I used to say, nope, I'm not letting you have that goal, because you can't do that. You cannot stop negative thoughts. And here's how I explain it. Let me just show you, and then you got a question. Think about a TV, all right? I loved how Natalie described our brain. I've heard it described before, but the visual part got me, all right? Now, here's how I teach people about our brain. That it's like a TV. That on a TV channel, you can have something playing up here, but along the bottom it says, oh, excuse me, breaking news. You get to choose to where you pay attention to and where you're focusing your attention right now. So at that moment, if you were following along with me, you were down here or you were up here. Here's how our brain works, and this is why meditation is so life-changing. It teaches you to strengthen your attention muscle so that you can so our brain is thinking positive and negative at the same time. And depression, for me, will hijack it. What we got to do is be able to say, okay, the negative's bigger. Remember Natalie said we're hardwired for negativity. So guess what? That's the easier one to see. What we're talking about and what meditation allows you with time and practice is to say, no, I don't want to focus on this shit, excuse my language, But I want to be here on the positive. And I have a tool that can help you, because this is the tool that I use to kind of switch it around. So she talked about an accident. Let me use that, all right, as an example. She shared about her accident. Well, guess what? I've had an accident. Anybody else in here had an accident? Yeah. And guess what? They're not pleasant. And we don't get to control what happens in life, all right? But here's my tool I learned, is that when I have something negative that happens, especially situation, I will do this. I will say this sentence out loud, and then I will finish it. So in the example of my car accident, it was Carol, because I say my name too. I don't call myself sweetheart, but I do say Carol, because I believe in being kind. And I say, Carol, it could be worse. You could have gotten seriously hurt. You could have even just gotten hurt. It's only a car. Or it could be worse. You could have died, and maybe all you got was this broken arm. But here's the trick. I call this the jumper cables, because your brain is going to stay negative until you do something to try and change it. And if you will say this out loud, it forces you, instead of focusing on, I'm trying to go backwards, y'all, instead of focusing up here, it makes you then identify a positive. Make sense? So it's as simple as, it could be worse. And then you say how it could be worse. Now you had a question?
Yeah. No, I read it. I read a lot of books,
yeah,
and self-help books.
Yep.
And I read somewhere that every thought has a feeling and an emotion. So if you want to feel good in your body, there's chemicals in your body that are natural. But what you choose to feel can change the fear.
So what she's talking about, she read a book, because she reads some self-help books, and what she talked about is it the thoughts and the feelings and behaviors. Think of a triangle, all right? There's thoughts, feelings, behaviors. They all influence the other. So if you don't like how you're thinking, how you're feeling, focus on your thoughts or your behavior. Change it, because then it connects. And you said self-help, but can I tell you where I learned a lot more lessons? In the business section. Jack Canfield was the Success Principles. I didn't read his Chicken Soup for the Soul. I read his book, Success Principles. Spencer Johnson wrote Who Moved My Cheese, which was another great book about fear. It's a business book. He wrote Peaks and Valleys. He wrote... Honestly, you guys, the tools that I've learned the most from is I learned them in business and I applied them to life. Because like Natalie talked about, meditation is not just what we do when you're meditating, it's how it applies in life and how we can use those tools. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Anybody here ever read that book a gazillion years ago? That to me is a life book. That's a recovery book, and it changed my life, some of the lessons I learned, and it changed my health too. So that's what this tool is. It could be worse. Make sense? All right. Now, that brings us to B. And B stands for blueprint. And here's the thing I want to share with you all about blueprint, even though... All right. Okay. I made the table, so don't get nervous, all right? 27 years ago, I put enough nails in here that it will hold an elephant, probably. But I'm not going to talk about the blueprint, because that's what you have in front of you in the book. That's a little bit of what I created this book around. But what I want to point out is just what's in the book. So if Bonnie came along and sawed off the leg, and some of you have seen me, I've been to some chapters and done this, so you might be seeing this again. But here's the point of this. If I get down to one leg, it ain't going to work too good. And the same way, medicine doesn't work too good. Medicine will not make us well. All right? It will help us, but it will not. And so you can't rely just on the medicine. You got to have other things around that. And the 4 legs, I found the 4 corners when I worked in the hospital. I went backwards. Were these. It was medicine. It was outpatient treatment. Sobriety is all of us, you all. It doesn't have nothing to do with just drugs or alcohol. It has to do with stopping harmful behaviors. So for me, my blood pressure, now I have to be mindful of salt. All right? This is in your book. This is actually what each of these things is for. And then there is the structure, which is the routine. I call these the corners because if you lost the corner of your foundation, you're in trouble. But again, all this is in that book, Transforming Illness to Wellness. That's exactly what the book is about. But what I want to show you is the reason why we have to have 14. Now here's the thing. Anybody in the hospital a long time ago, like 25, 30 years ago? This is what we used to do for people in the hospital. We used to put these things all in place. It's what we do now. But we don't give people enough time to learn that that's what they need to do when they get out of the hospital. Make sense? Stress happens, it's an earthquake. And this not only saved my life once, it saved my life, I believe, twice. Because here's what happened. Last summer, I'm going to hop off of here, okay? So, yeah. Okay. Last summer, I have 2 dogs that pass away on me. And anybody here, when I say there's feeling depressed and then there's being in a depression, do you understand that those two are different? Yeah. I've lost dogs before and I felt depressed. In fact, with the first one, so this is Buddy, the black one, and then that's Callie, my golden. Buddy passed away in June and Callie in July. And with Buddy, I felt depressed. I mean, I've felt depressed where I ate nothing but cereal for a few weeks. But I could function. What happened with Callie was very different. Now, this is my favorite picture of her because she would get on the couch and lay upside down. And notice she's using the pillow. Anybody here, raise your hands if you have a dog or cat that does that. And do they use a pillow? Yeah. My one now that can't wait till I get out of bed. But here's actually my favorite picture of Callie. Now, here's the thing. I didn't know it until I started falling back in that big black hole. What ended up happening is Callie took seizures. 6 times a day she took meds. Getting her in and out got to where I had to help her. What I didn't realize at the time, and finally I caught on to it, was, oh my God, I lost my structure. Structure is our routines. You don't have to leave your house. You could be in your house and create routine. My world, my day turned upside down, and I didn't even realize it because I spent so much time taking care of her. Makes sense that I didn't realize it until it was gone. So here's what happened. My structure changed, and I like to say it's like a house. If you run into the corner of the building, it's going to topple down. So immediately, I had to rebuild that leg. 2 things happened. 1, I had to give up working for DBSA. Because the work that I needed to do for DBSA as a parity consultant, and those of you, kind of been in my parity workshop, my brain didn't function. My brain couldn't work. And then, the more that I felt like I needed to work, the more anxious I got. And then you know what happens then? The more anxious you get, the more your brain doesn't work. So I realized that I had to step away from there and just do something that I didn't have to use my brain for until I got better. So I started working at the hospital because I didn't have to think. I just had to do, right? And the other thing I did is I got out of the house and went to the library. Because even if you leave your house, you create structure outside of that. And I needed to do that in order to survive. When I got laid off at work is your structure. That's why depression and all symptoms of our mental health conditions can get worse after you're not able to work because you've just lost your structure. And so when I got laid off, I went to the library and I got out of the house as if I was going to the job, but I just went to the library. Make sense? And I was fortunate.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Okay, when you did the table thing,
Yep.
I found it in the book,
Yep.
but I can't read the little words. Like on the legs, they're so tiny.
Oh. All right, so go to the chapter title. So each title is actually chaptered that way.
Okay.
That's good. I never knew that, you guys. You might need your magnifying glass. I apologize.
Listen, I was like,
Oh.
wait a second.
Now, here's the thing. Last combination. All right? Let me flip myself up here.
If you don't mind me asking on that wellness table.
The 4 legs are sobriety, and structure.
Okay.
Now,
Thank you. You're driving.
yeah, he's driving. So here's what the last letter is to the combination is coping tools. All right? And some of you who've been with me before. So I'm going to ask up here in the front, will you please shake this up?
Oh, yeah, go for it, Fran. Harder.
All right.
She's Irish, so you gotta add some.
Fran's got some. She's too. Now, can you see that Fran actually did put a little pressure in this bottle, even way in the back there? So here's why we need coping tools, because this is what life does to us. It happens and it shakes up us on the inside. And here's the secret about this. It doesn't go anywhere on its own. Doesn't go away. It just stays there and it builds and it builds and it builds and it builds until either it explodes or some of us implode. Some of us don't lose it. Some of us it stays in and it hurts us. And I'll have this at the table at lunch, but I want you all to see this bottle because what happened was it stopped foaming, so I retired it. And then it was in my garage 6 months later or so. I went out and I found it concaved. That's what happens to those of us that hold everything inside. We concave. And that could be the depression, the anxiety. It could be your physical health, your blood pressure, your blood sugars. And so here's what I want to tell you. We gotta let a little out. And I call it, my coping program, I call Do 60. So all we want to do is go, and here's the reason I call it Do 60. And I want to share with you guys a couple of my best tools. So, first tool is this. Do 60 means that you are going to do 60 seconds of something. And there's a secret. You want to do something calming. So has this ever happened to anybody? You're talking, you're at work, you're at home, the feeling starts to build, till it gets up to here and you open your mouth and you say stuff that you can't take back? That's what happens with that pressure. It builds. So the first step is you got to do something to stop the level from rising. Sometimes people walk away. They say, okay, I'm going to say something, let me walk away. But they never do anything to create the release. And then somebody comes up to them and it spills out on the wrong person because they never got rid of some of it was there. Make sense? So I'm going to give you a calming, and then I'm also going to give you a release tool that I want you to walk away using. Now, it's interesting because, you guys, it builds on what Natalie said. All right, so who here knows what will take out Superman faster than a speeding bullet?
Kryptonite.
So I want to introduce you to our human kryptonite, and it's called oxygen. So when you hear about belly breathing, here's why diaphragmatic breathing is so important. Look at this. If this is the truck and this is the ShopRite loading dock in the back of the store, they're going to get a lot of stuff off of that truck, right?